Welcome everybody to today's ResNexus webinar. Recover 100% of your campground's electric costs with short stay utility metering. And today we've got a special webinar for you. I'm joined today obviously by Mike Sorensen, the founder of Wild Energy. And what we've done is we have met and we sort of did a recording of a roundtable discussion between ResNexus and Wild Energy and a mutual client of ours, Red Coach Resort. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play that recording for you so you can follow along and see the questions that we have for each other as you can learn more about Wild Energy and our integration and the integration with ResNexus. And then that'll go for about, I think, 20 or so minutes. And then after that, we will have an opportunity to do a live Q&A so you can hop in, ask your questions, and we can go from there. Anything else you want to add on before I get the video started, Mike?
No, I think there's a lot of great content, and we were lucky to have Lee on our recording. So we hope you enjoy that. We captured all of his perspectives as an owner and somebody that uses both Wild Energy and ResNexus.
All right, fantastic. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and start the video. So enjoy the show and come with your questions towards the end. Thanks, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to today's ResNexus webinar. Today, I'm joined by a couple people. On here, I've got Mike Sorensen, president and founder of Wild Energy, along with Matt Wiggins, director of marketing at Wild Energy. And we've also got a property owner. We've got Lee Brady, who is the owner of Red Coach Resort, who is a ResNexus user and also a user of Wild Energy. And we're just going to have a conversation about the implementation of Wild Energy and the benefits and just kind of go from there. So I'll just go ahead and pass it over to Mike to kick us off here. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming on.
Super. Thanks, Gavin. And Lee, thanks for jumping on with us today. Appreciate your time. And both Gavin and I appreciate that you're our joint customer. So thank you for that. Why don't we start off with kind of the beginnings of Red Coach? I was out there early on, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I certainly got to see it under development. So talk about where it started and where you're at and where it's going.
All right, very well. And hello, greetings, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here and wanted to, I think, as we move into the future, electric metering is probably going to be not only important, but even become more important in the future. Now, we at Red Coach Resort have a little bit of an advantage over perhaps other RV parks that might want to be actually converting over because we actually started and opened our business in 2022 in May. And before we even broke ground, we were starting to see glimpses of electric vehicles, et cetera. And so I really wanted to enter into that to begin with. So some of my answers here, I'm going to try to address maybe those who are more interested in converting. But my story is going to be a little bit more on the how the process was. As a matter of fact, when I was looking for ResNexus or our back office implementation on some of the websites, ResNexus was actually on the forefront of actually considering that at that time. But when we got ResNexus, there wasn't any metering, and then Wild Energy came along. So we actually selected ResNexus because they seemed to be more into the needs of a lot of the parks, and they like to change that. And I got that indication from them. And then I think it was probably about a year after we opened is when Wild Energy actually was able to come in with ResNexus, and that was a very, very large positive for me because now I'm not having to operate, maybe a metering service that I have to go to one website and then to another website, and it integrates very, very smoothly. So we kind of came in probably maybe as one of the first users within ResNexus to take Wild Energy. I'm not sure about that, but that was probably about the 2023 time span or maybe late 2022. So, but I guess to answer your question, that's we knew that this is the direction that we wanted to proceed into almost right off the bat.
Yeah, and when I got out to your park, I think you were still under construction. You were putting in new sites or expanding the existing park. And I remember you were putting ponds and stuff in. So it was pretty
Right.
early on in your development process.
Yes, that's correct. And we were still we're still moving forward now. We're just opening up phase three and we're building phase four. Now, in that early time, we actually started charging for power right off the bat. So we had to go manually walk to each of the pedestals and make that call. We had people coming and leaving all different times of the day. So it was, I got my staff out there, and every time I needed to check somebody out with ResNexus, I had to give them a call and say, hey, man, can you walk over to site A12 and give me a meter reading? And they'd go over there and take a photo of it, send me the photo, I'd read it off, then I'd have to type it into ResNexus. And it was fine, but I knew that this was the direction I wanted to go right off the bat. So that's what we proceeded. And we did get some, when we're talking to a lot of our guests, like, hey, how come you're charging for overnight? And we can maybe get into some of that into the future as well. But yeah, that's kind of our beginnings.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And you brought up a great point there, which we did want to talk about, which is what we call short stay utilities, right? And I think it's one of the things that you're doing is that's uncommon in the industry, but is gaining some traction, and that is, you know, um, capturing utilities from day one when somebody checks in. As you described, that wasn't possible with manual read meters because you'd have somebody running around and people are like, that's crazy and it doesn't work operationally. But with technology now and real-time meter reading, and the ResNexus integration, you can pull that data right in.
Yes.
Somebody checks in, it grabs the meter reading. Somebody checks out, it calculates the difference. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And why don't we go into that question you just brought up is, what's been the guest experience? Because I think most park operators are afraid to upset their guests. And I have experience talking to people about, hey, would you rather pay your own utilities than the guy next to you? And every time I've had that conversation, it's a non-issue. But from a park owner operator perspective, what's been your feedback from guests on short stay utilities?
Well, you're exactly right. We had some call, because we inform our guests, of course, on any of the phone when we take phone reservations that we do charge for power for overnight. And some of them is so like, wow, I haven't heard that before. Why are you doing that? And we pretty much answer, and this is probably maybe 5% of the phone calls. It's not a lot of folks, but um, we just pretty much say, with the oncoming, all the electric vehicles, a guest can come in and fill up their electric tanks overnight and take a significant percentage of your revenue. And so we were concerned about that. Now, at the time, Ford, Dodge, Tesla, and GMC and Volvo didn't have electric trucks. Okay. But I was just concerned someone maybe hauling their electric vehicle behind them. And a lot of people tow vehicles, and it could be an electric vehicle, and they pull out $10 of electric power out of there. Like the Tesla Model 3 takes it can hold 50 kilowatt hours in its tank, and that's about $8, and that's about 20% of our typical $40 a night revenue. So the percentage is significant. But now even with the new trucks that have come in, and this is kind of what we foresaw at Red Coach Resort, that we needed to move in there, and why not just jump in right now and do it because it's coming. But on some of these trucks, they can pull in probably about 3 times the amount of kilowatt hours than these vehicles can, and that can get up to half of our revenue. And I mean, we want to provide that power, but we also want to be, have our guests be responsible for whatever their usage is. Otherwise, I'm going to have to, up my average site charge just to handle, maybe the one or two guests that come in and want to fill their tanks up. So it made sense to us, and then you're making them be responsible for their electricity as well. They don't, in the summertime, they don't. open up their windows and doors and run their air conditioner all day long while they're not there. I mean, there was no reason for them not to do that. I'm not saying that they're not going to be responsible, but now they are responsible and they know they're responsible. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so would it be fair to say that, it's kind of a non-issue? It's not affected your bookings. Nobody's really, I think that's what the park owners are worried about, right? Is it going to
Yeah,
affect my business if I start charging for short stay utilities? And what I'm hearing you say is, hey, it really has not been a problem
yeah.
for us.
So 100% of the time when we answer about the all the electric vehicles come in, they go like, oh, I can understand that. That's pretty much their
Right, right.
response. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you can understand it. So
Yeah,
anyway,
right. And that's been my experience. But again, I wasn't a park owner, so I certainly wanted to validate that with you that that was the case. Transparency, I think, is a big thing with the guests. Do you use any of our tools, such as the brochure or the check the meter site? Do you give them those kinds of things to help them educate themselves or watch their own utilities?
well, ResNexus provides an awesome texting way to we communicate with our guests, and uh, rarely, but we do have guests that say, "Hey, I moved from this site to that site. How do I know that you're charging me the correct metering and all that?" And we've made up a basic text response to that where we can send that to the guests to where I say, hey, look, we offer this, this free app that you can monitor your electricity. And a lot of, there's a few people who are really want to make sure that, if what their usage is, and because they're concerned about billing, et cetera. But we're very transparent, and mostly because of what Wild Energy offers. That you guys offer this metering app where they can see what their daily uses are, and help curtail any long-term electric power that they might have to pay. So yeah,
Yeah, great point. And we see more and more RVers with their own electric monitoring capabilities, whether it's in one of the big surge protectors. Those things are more sophisticated now, where they log to the phones, and so it's interesting because they try to make sure that the meter's accurate, and we've had zero
yeah,
complaints because they're tracking it. Obviously, we're tracking it. And at the end of the day, we want no issues and nobody saying, "Hey, I'm not getting charged correctly." So that's been fantastic, and I think we've eliminated the most of the calls because we do provide transparency. We used to get calls from operators saying, "Hey, this guest wants to see all their data," and just by putting it online, we've eliminated the call to you, and then that eliminates the call to us, which I think has been fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, talk about how the billing works when you have somebody short, staying for a short time. Walk us through the ResNexus experience and, kind of the operational aspect of that for your team. Um,
All right. So once we saw that Wild Energy came in, you and I spoke and tried to figure this out. And, Wild Energy, you have your, dollars per meter per month. And so we were trying to figure out how to incorporate that. And since we were also doing nightly, for that. That might make it a little more difficult. So we kind of put our heads together here and try to figure out how can we, number one, capture that extra cost that we're paying for this great service from All Energy, as well as um, maybe have some advantages for us. So what we did, now this might not be, all parks have to come up with their own, costing and charging scenarios, but what we end up doing, we had our nightly charges prior to Wild Energy at $43 a night, for instance.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
And then, had discounts of 15% in a weekly and 50% for monthly. So we said, like, well, we have all these different scenarios. How are we going to do this? And so what we did is we wanted to give our guests a little bit of a discount with this scenario. What we did was we dropped our nightly charge from $43 down to 39, which it's still there 2 years later. Okay. So they have an advantage where they have their upfront costs to be lower, and that's that $5 difference that pretty much we pay for, per month for a reading from Wild Energy. So if they stay overnight, they pay this extra $5 to get back up to kind of a $43. But then they also have to pay for their actual kilowatt hour usage. So it's going to be a little bit higher than they paid. But, you know, if they stay 2 days, then or all the way up to say 6 days before they get to a week,
Hmm.
now they have an advantage. And, 80, we thought on our particular part, like 80% of our guests are longer term. So the nightly we're still giving them advantage. It might be a little bit more difficult. I would say $2 or $3 more that they're going to use in kilowatt hour usage overnight, unless of course they're EV or whatever. So it's only a couple of dollars on the overnight, but as soon as you get to the second to sixth night for us, they have an advantage because they're getting a $39 a night charge, okay, instead of 43. So, 6 nights times that is a little bit more. So we were trying to figure out a way to even all that out in a way that's our billing is not confusing, okay? We had a lot of other confusing ways, but we found that one to be acceptable, giving our longer term basic guests that are usually here for, 3, to 5 days. We don't have a whole lot of overnighters. We have people come in want to do at least 2 nights because they're driving late, they arrive late, and they don't want to get up early in the morning. They want to just take a break and then go. So now on our monthly guests, um, we kind of kept our monthly just the same because it was a wash for us. We kept our monthly the same, and we're just paying that extra $5, and then we charge them whatever that electric use for those longer stays. And that's, like I said, that's 80% of our business. So that one wasn't so had to be so intricate on a monthly basis. So, but that's kind of how we handle it. There's a lot of different approaches for this, but for the advantages that we have for not only back office recording of that, but also just the ease of anytime someone can be leaving at any time during the day, and all we have to do is
Yeah.
check them out. It's there. We're all done. So, but it was a little bit hard to try to come up for us personally and how we were going to handle it. And each park member will probably need to just kind of do that based upon who their typical clientele are, et cetera. We have had to do that, but it's worked very well for us on this approach. So
And I'm sure
Yeah.
also being able to offer that, show that lower rate, that lower nightly rate as a result of calculating those
yeah,
costs differently, is
yeah,
also very helpful for, attracting, more of those campers and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's great.
Yeah, and it's a great point that Lee brings up is that you can actually lower the rate, but end up making more money because you're recovering the utilities. So if you know your average is $4 per, and you can actually make more by
Yeah,
recovering that on top of the rate, that benefits the park owner.
yeah,
Obviously, dropping the utility expenses down to the bottom line improves your NOI, right?
yeah,
It's no longer an expense because it's offset
right.
by the
Yeah,
collector.
have as much power as you like. It's up to
That's
them.
right.
And
That's
we've
right.
so for us, this might be of interest to some of the guests or other owners that are listening in. For us, we see a monthly range of power between 80 and $180 per month. And our maximum we've ever seen was $350 on a
Mhm.
monthly basis for that power. So these are, we've removed ourselves from the risk of power, which is,
Right.
you can sleep easier at night a little bit, not wondering who's going to be doing power. And then, hey, do I have to increase my average monthly site charge now to handle these new EVs coming in? We're ready for the new EVs coming in. We've already established this thing. And so we're ready to move ahead. We can concentrate on other things of importance like being there for our guests, helping them if they need for anything, retail, ice and wood and,
Right.
keeping our roads up and all of that. So anyway, it kind of frees us up quite a bit and not have to go and sleep at night a little bit easier. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we call that margin compression. So you don't worry about
okay.
the electric,
Yeah,
compressing your margin because something changed, somebody used more, or even the electric companies raising their rates, right? You're insulated from that
that's
because
right.
it's just going to get rolled in. How
Yeah.
far in advance do you allow bookings?
A year.
A year.
Yeah,
So I wanted you to say that. I wasn't sure, but you think about it. If a utility raises your rate in mid-year and somebody's
right.
booked a year in advance, um, you're covered, right?
Yes.
It's not gonna hurt you, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
What would you say would be any of the lessons learned or things that you would pass on to other owners um, from your experience?
Well, number one, it's a more fair approach, I would say. It's just not right. I think if somebody comes in with a pop-up camper and they use, $10 of electric, and then you got your Class A coming in with three air conditioners pulling out $100, right?
Hmm.
And so if I did not have the metering service, I would have to just increase my average rate and have everybody pay the same, which is just kind of not fair for
Hmm.
them. And it also, handling the responsibility over to our guests also, reduces, the overall power usage and helps, environment, I would say. These are kind of secondary, but still, we want to be responsible for all that. And if you got a smaller footprint of energy power usage for the whole park, it helps with that carbon footprint and a lot of those things that are being spoke about today. And so that I would say was probably mostly the lessons learned. Like I said, being a new park owner, we built this into the park because we already saw this, and I took advantage of calling a lot of owners prior to building our park and the on the approach that we're taking with energy, and they brought these things up to me that they were already having that issue, having to be concerned about power usage and having to struggle with always changing their rates or at least trying to stay up to date with that sort of thing. So we said like, hey, let's, because at that time there were like Wi-Fi metering and all that, but
Hmm.
I wanted something to integrate with ResNexus because that's very powerful, that combination for both of you. And so I'm very happy with the service on both. And like I said, even to the point where you came out, Mike, and there was issues with, I think there was firmware that needed to be updated, and Mike said, "Well, I'm going to fly out and go and do that." Okay, and he did, and to me, that was like, I don't usually, that's not a typical service. I usually get that kind of response. It's kind of like a response I typically get is like, oh, well, I'll send you over to our technical team and you can talk to them about it or whatever it is. But, I'm kind of like, hey,
Yep.
my meters are down. I'm having to go back to what I used to be doing and taking some readings. And I think you had that repaired in, I don't know, 3 days or something like that. I don't know. You got on a plane right away, so I appreciate that. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean,
okay,
that is.
well, that's good. I spoke that up. I've spoke that to several other people who have called me, and it's like, that kind of response is, I think, why Wild Energy is a winning team. So I'm glad to be on that team. Anyway,
Yeah, I appreciate that. We do take support pretty seriously. I took a call today from somebody, and they're like, "Oh, we got you." And I said, "Yeah,
yeah,
if my
yeah,
support team is busy, full, eating lunch, whatever, it will eventually
yeah,
roll up to the top."
yeah.
Uh, because that it's important to retain customers, and I get to hear a little bit about what's going on in the field, and um, when we need to, we'll be there to make sure that it's working for our customers.
Yeah. And anybody would like to call, get some other information, I'm happy to do that. Any other owners, et cetera. So open that up, and I think I've already had a couple of gentlemen call on their parks considering moving into this. And so, just like other owners help me with some of their concerns, which greatly appreciated because, it is a substantial investment. And, as business owners, we have to, make sure we're going down the right path. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that from the past, and I would like to carry that baton into the future of any others that might be interested in doing that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely referred Red Coach and you lead to several customers and people we've been talking to because you kind of are at the vanguard of this kind of strategy for the park of the future, we'll call it. And on that, you touched on something earlier, as I think we're kind of wrapping up, but I wanted to get into more of maybe a little bit of the weeds on the integration as far as, the topic of automation. Like how hands off is it for your team when it comes to, the meter reading through the integration, check in, check out? Would you say it's completely automated or is it your staff handling that process or is it pretty hands off?
I'm going to answer that with basically with the startup. Since we were so new, I considered myself a beta user of the ResNexus / Wild Energy interface. And I think the three of us helped close out a lot of those bugs that don't exist anymore. And that was cleared probably within the first month of usage. But we were identifying things, I believe, at that point that were causing, a little extra effort on our side, on our back office side,
Mhm.
that I really wanted to make it easy for, because, training new employees to handle phones and handle the reservation process is kind of important. And the simpler all that is, the less time we have to spend as a business to, educate any new employees doing that. And so it was, I think some of the issues were something like, hey, when can, when a person checks out, when will the automatic energy meter read and record onto ResNexus? And I think we modded that a little bit and gave some back. We had some areas where we could adjust those things, and I can't remember what the other issues were, but both ResNexus and Wild Energy worked very fast and very closely to get all those done. And pretty much now it's there's not really anything we have to do. We just kind of go in when we're checking somebody else and just double check that the Wild Energy meter is actually got applied. And that's really all we do with the checkout process. It's already there because our checkout time is 3 o'clock, and we set to have the Wild Energy meter go in there. I think it's an hour, maybe 2 hours prior to that typical checkout time. So we check the meters like, hey, have they stayed past their checkout time is pretty much what we do. And if they have, we can see what the difference is right there. Like, hey, and we'll give them a call like, hey, you guys checked out after 3 o'clock because the meter's still running. Okay. So it's actually, we have a lot of cameras, but I don't have to go bother my staff and say, hey, could you go over to A17 and see if that guy's still there? Because I can go look at the meter now and see if they're still there because Wild Energy checks them out like for us, it's like I think it's 1 o'clock. But if we still see meter running, we know that they're still there. So that
Yeah.
even helps with our checkout process in that way. So
That's great. So it's not only hands off, it's actually saving you time and energy in a
yeah,
lot of ways. It's adding rather than that's great.
yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions, or do we kind of come to the end of our discussion? Anything we missed so far?
Yeah, I think we hit the big topics for sure.
Okay.
Uh,
You know, uh, hey, thanks everyone so much for attending. Thanks to Lee Brady for sharing your story with all of us and how you were able to find success with wild energy metering on your property. I learned a lot. It was great to hear your experiences. And thanks as well to Mike and Matt for coming on and for adding to that discussion and telling us more about how this can be a really valuable solution for a lot of properties out there. I really appreciate all of you for doing that.
Yep.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
And thanks again, Lee, for jumping on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you, Gavin, for putting this all together for us. This is great. You did great. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And thanks as well to everyone who took the time out of your day to come and spend this time with us and learn more about wild energy and ResNexus as well. So I appreciate you all and hope you all have a great rest of your day. All right, I'll just cut myself off right there. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Oh my silly face is just sitting right there. That's annoying, but that's all right.
Hey,
Uh,
you could probably drop that screen now for us.
all right, yeah, sounds good. Would you mind just maybe I'll just take a screenshot or something like that and type into the chat, sales at wildenergyco.com and stuff like that so people can access those resources. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and drop that. Okay, well, in any case, maybe while I get that figured out, we are prepared now to answer questions. Looks like we've already got one from Daniel. I don't know if you're prepared to answer that one, Mike. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about wild energy or ResNexus and the integration thereof, go ahead and put them into the Q&A section now, and we'll try and get those answered for you. Our
Yeah.
one question from Daniel is asking in regards to pricing, especially in regards to monitoring costs where he has 20, looking at 20 to 25 stands.
Yeah, if you're Daniel, if you're calling them stands, I'm assuming you're dialed in from Canada because that seems to be a very Canadian way to say that. In Canada, we have to go through Measurement Canada for some certification up there, and so our meters are sold through a distributor in Canada called Jestech. We're happy to put you in touch with them. So they actually provide the pricing in Canadian dollars, which I'm not great at doing. But we're happy to hook you up with Jestech, who works with Measurement Canada and gets those meters sealed for you as well before they are delivered to the site. So I don't exactly know what the sealing fee is and what Measurement Canada charges for that, but Jestech would. There is, to answer your second question there about monitoring costs, we do provide the service and the monitoring. So that I'll put it in US dollars, and maybe you can do the translation. I don't know what the exchange rate is today. Once we lock it in, we try to keep it set there, but it's about $5.80 per meter per month, and that's our starting point. If you have a lot of meters, then that goes down in volume, but that's where we start at in USD.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that breakdown, Mike. Let's see. We've got one question about wild energy with CampSpot. So we're ResNexus. CampSpot would be a different property management solution altogether. Um, so I would say maybe reach out to uh, CampSpot or to Wild Energy to see if they have an integration. I'm not really sure about that.
Perfect.
Oh, go ahead.
Nope. Go to the next one.
Okay. All right. We've got another question. Looks like we've got an aspiring campground owner, an entrepreneur looking to purchase a campground. And they're asking, how do you compare to other solutions in the space? I'm not quite sure whether they're referring to Wild Energy or ResNexus. Maybe I'll let you go ahead and answer first, Mike, and then I'll answer for the ResNexus pitch. How does that sound?
Sure, sure. We are by far the leader in utilities for the outdoor hospitality industry. There is just hands down nobody in our space. There are some other folks out there, so that's full transparency. One that's been doing it for twice as long as we have. I would say that we lead through our software and our innovation. So I'm a software guy by background. I love technology. And so we're continuously innovating what we're doing with the data and the software and the integrations and the portals. And we continue to invest in that over and over and over. So we lead in that space. I think, on the price and cost side, our hardware is generally same ballpark or cheaper, especially we have these things called receivers, and they run about $1,500, and some of our competitors run about 5,000. And we recommend redundancy. So you could put two of our receivers in for $3,000, or you could put two of theirs in for $10,000. And then there are some DIY solutions, but I think the power of something like this is the integration, which is what we're trying to highlight on this webinar. When you're able to pull that data right into the PMS and right into the guest folio, make it transparent and bill it right out. And, we're head and shoulders above everybody else in the software integration space.
Great, thank you. And once again, I'm not quite sure if this person was asking about Wild Energy or ResNexus, but just for the sake of it, I'll just go ahead and give the really super quick pitch for ResNexus, and that is that we've got a couple of really great benefits for campground owners out there. Um, by far and above being that the commission-free online direct bookings that we offer. It's on your own customized booking engine. People can book from a map. So if you've got a map of your sites and units and everything like that, they can book in that way, input their vehicle information, which you could then look up in the ResNexus system. We've got great customer support, and all kinds of other amazing, tools and features out there that'll really help it make it easy for you. Definitely go to resnexus.com and get in contact with our team. They'd love to give you a free tour. All right, let's see. Okay, here's a question from Jake. We would like to install your system. We are a new campground with 30 campsites and are expanding to 200. Can you give any kind of estimate for capital for that kind of installation, or would that probably just be very much a custom quote?
No, I mean, I can give a ballpark. Everybody wants to know ballparks, and I think
That's
that's
right.
fair. So I'll give list pricing. We do discount in volume, and we do discount based upon some of the associations that you're members of. So always ask for those types of things. But for something like that, our meters are $165 a piece. I like to compare those to picnic tables and fire rings because it's a capital investment. You're going to buy an electric meter and put it in that socket and hopefully never replace it in the next 25 years. Whereas you spend $500 on a picnic table, you're going to probably replace that thing in 7 to 10 years. So, our return on that investment is really good. When we do the calculation, you're going to get a return on that investment in 1 to 2 years. It's always in that range. So that's pretty good. You do have to buy the receivers, and for a site of 200, we would recommend 2 receivers, so that we have load and redundancy and capacity for a campground that large. Installation is usually handled by people that are local. You can pay us to fly out, but we don't recommend that because usually there's somebody local that can do it. Replacing an electric meter, setting an electric meter is actually easier than replacing a breaker and a pedestal.
All right, great. And I think we've got a couple other questions relating to pricing, but I think you gave a good rundown of that, Mike. Unless there's anything else you'd like to talk to from those, but I think we kind of covered that. All right, let's see. We've got one more question from Scott. Let's see. Do you have staff that installs meters at each site, or is that something we would be able to do ourselves? You said it's plugins, so is this something the camper can unplug?
The camper cannot unplug it. It is something that goes into a socket, and there's a number of different ways that you can do that. But it's a permanent fixture mounted meter, just like on your home. You're not going to go out and replace that. You don't need to be an electrician to do it. Maintenance staff can do it if you've got people that know how to change a breaker and do some general electrical work. If you have old globe style meters, you can pull that out, put another one right back in there. They're pretty plug and play.
All right, fantastic. And then one more looks like a follow-up question. What would you say is the typical installation? How long would that take for like a 250 site campground?
Good question. So that depends if you have meters or you're adding meters. It's two very different implementations. We've actually got a link to a case study where we replaced 250 meters in about 2.5, 3 days, and that included installing the antennas and all that. And we did that for a KOA park where they wanted them all replaced, and so we whipped through there and knocked them all out. So it's doable in a few days if you already have meters. If you don't have meters and you got to do wiring, that's a different ballgame.
That's right. That's great. Okay, it looks like we've come to the end of our questions for now. So if there's any more, get them in now. And while that's going on, I'll just say that once again, I'd like to thank Mike and Matt from Wild Energy. I'd like to thank Lee from Red Coach Resort for that roundtable discussion with us. Had some great insights there. And thank you as well to everyone who took the time out of your day to learn more about the Wild Energy and ResNexus integration. We really appreciate that. And if you want to learn any more about either of our two products, just make sure and get in touch. We'd love to talk to you.
One last question got slid in there. Did you see
That's
that,
right.
Gavin?
Yep. That's why I give that little outro and I vamp for a minute just to give them time.
Wait and
Uh,
see.
Yeah, so what's entailed in the equipment? Meters and towers? Can you talk to that a little bit, Mike?
Yeah. It's actually a pretty, we've got this down to a science now. It is meters, which is probably some on the shelf behind me. Electric meter and then a receiver, which is like think of it like a Wi-Fi access point. Those are the two basic components. The meter is talking to that receiver and sending the data. We often will put a little PC on site to help us with maintenance, but that's not even required and it's not critical. So the two basic components are you need a meter that's got our radio in it, and you need a receiver that's picking up those signals. And those are the two main components of the solution. Then everything else from there is software. All the data is stored. We keep that for compliance reasons, for complaints, for we help a lot of our customers maintain the records they need to for the public utilities in their state. And then we obviously work with ResNexus on the API to integrate and pass the data back and forth. And that's done all real time as well. So the minute ResNexus needs a piece of information about, what does the meter say at check-in? What does the meter say at checkout? They make a quick software call to us and we give it back to them, sub-second. So it's kind of cool integration that we have between the two companies.
Absolutely. Okay, and then looks like one more question from Scott. How do we bill?
That's more on the software side. You want to take that, Gavin?
Um, let's see. Yeah, Casey, are you able to talk to that at all?
Yeah. So handling the handling the billing for the meters is pretty automatic. When your guest checks out, it adds the meter reading to the reservation. That's an outstanding balance on the reservation. You charge their card on file. All happens pretty seamlessly.
All right, and it looks like there's a follow-up on that reservation first and electric last. I guess it's an order of operations thing for billing. Is that question? Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of our users do make sure that they've charged the reservation balance by the time the guest arrives. So they would just at the end of stay then go back into that reservation and charge that utility amount on that reservation. I have seen some users not even charge their guests up front and handle it all at the end. Really just depends on how you want to manage your business.
All right.
Gavin, I'll take the one on the monthly rate from Michael. So Michael, you do have to charge the rate that you're being charged by your utility. I can tell you that nobody yet has peak energy rates built into this yet. I think that's something we'll see in the next 12 to 24 months because the electric rates are getting more complicated around the country with peak time rates. So typically what happens right now is people charge the base rate and they do miss some of the peak recovery that they could get. And that's a software thing. We have to get more sophisticated at tracking those peak. We have all the data of when the peak time energy is used, but we, meaning the software companies, have to get more sophisticated on those billing rates, time of day usage, and be able to do that calculation. And we're not quite there yet.
All right, sounds good. And then one more question from Scott relating to looks like billing and such. I guess his specific situation is that they have self check-ins at night that pay cash. Are there any complications that come with that in terms of billing for utilities?
The only complication that you'd experience from that is just making sure that you're talking to that guest before they leave. As long as you've got someone around that can handle that around check-in time, it probably won't be too bad. Also, if you use contactless check-in through ResNexus, that does give the guests the option to see those charges and see what's going on. So if it's like a Dropbox situation, you could tell them, hey, you have to use this and check this specific thing in contactless check-in and deliver cash for your outstanding utility charges.
All right, great. Sounds like we've got solutions for every possible permutation, right? All right. It looks like now I think we've come to the end of our questions for real this time.
Good.
So, yeah, I guess just thanks one more time, everybody. Thank you, Mike. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week.
Thanks. And reach out with any further questions.
Yes, please do. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.